的なワンサイドゲーム退屈ね。
Oh? Well, hello there. What brings you to my channel? You fucking weebs. Yours truly, Gotchaholic, and today we will be discussing some pretty crazy shit, not gonna lie. Though this video may seem ambitious in title, believe me, I'm not so conceited that I believe I'm completely right about any of the things I say, though I assure you we're definitely onto something here, okay? However, I will need the help from the community, the Ciconia community, the Umineko community, and obviously the Higurashi community. Ultimately, I am just laying down a general theory of everything, and it will be up to you guys to make the needed corrections and refinements. I will need your guys' help on this, so with that said, let's get into it. First of all, like any good scientific theory, I actually have fucking equations for this bullshit. The basic equation goes like this: witch into human into game piece into proxy. Now, the proxy is a little tricky. See, ultimately, the original proxy will look like the game piece, and their Dracig converted mind will look like the witch controlling aforementioned game piece. Now, before we apply the scientific equation to all three stories, just keep in mind, these are the facts that we know for sure. We for sure know that Higurashi is literally just a game being played by Feathering, Birkenstell, and Lamb Delta. And we also know Ciconia is both the end and beginning of this game. Following this equation and applying it into the story, we'll start with Feathering as the witch. Her in-story person would be Hanyu, and then her game pieces would be Rika and Satoko. Likewise, we'll start with Birkenstell as the witch, her in-story character being Rika, and then her game piece being Keiichi. For Lamb Delta's case, she's obviously the witch, and then her in-story person would be Satoko, and her game piece would be Takano. Following the proxy equation, we have Veer, whom is the original proxy since she invented the Dracig conversion process in the first place, and she, of course, looks like Takano, the game piece. Then Veer's Dracig converted mind is being processed into Mitsuyo, whom is actually Gestress. Something that would really confirm the base intention of this theory is if we have a Birkenstell proxy in Ciconia, which, up to the point that I'm familiar with, we just saw a fucking Birkenstell shadow. Then, of course, we would need a proxy of Keiichi to appear in Ciconia. And what would completely shut this theory down is if we learn that minds are unable to be processed through Dracig conversion, or if Gestress really isn't Mitsuyo. However, the Brain Factory strongly suggests that minds are able to be processed, and not only that, but channeled into parallel simulated worlds. And based on Feathering's conversation with Satoko, it also implies that these parallel worlds could be layered upon the fragment worlds, though at this point is just speculation. And it's also worth noting, most Ciconia veterans seem to believe that Gestress is really Mitsuyo. However, this is unconfirmed as of now. Now, if you're confused, I'll just explain a little bit of the logic behind this madness. So the Dracig conversion process opens up the possibility for one mind to be filtered into several bodies, even at the same place and same time. And the direction Ciconia seems to be going with this is that you have a brain and a spine being processed into these parallel and simulated matrix loops, as in Lamb Delta's case, which does go with our equation. Though Rika and Birkenstell would follow a different system to a point in which they're operating through the Sea of Fragments, where they have one soul being transferred or reincarnated into multiple people, and in certain cases at the same place and same time. For example, the beginning of the Higurashi manga, similar to Veer and Mitsuyo, and potentially even Satoko and Takano, because we know one side effect of using Dracig conversion is dissociation, in other words, multiple personalities. Keep in mind, this dissociative side effect was documented just through converting spiridium, which is the common element found in Ciconia. So imagine processing your fucking mind. Now, if Feathering held dominion over the matrix loops, just like she holds dominion over the Sea of Fragments, this could tie into how she is actually the controller of Rika and Satoko. In other words, that they are her game pieces. Though, this is where I'm going to leave it up to the community to disprove me or add on to this or, whatever have you, really. And this is where I step away from the science. I will leave the rest in the hands of the community. It will be up to you guys to confirm or disprove or refine what I've laid out, but there's more to talk about. So, my channel is obviously founded on Higurashi, in particular Go and Soats, so we'll start there. So, say goodbye to our fucked up theory equation bullshit for now. I guess we can begin addressing a huge misconception I see plaguing the community y'all don't even realize. And I'm not talking about, like, the general fandom. I'm talking to, like, Umineko veterans, Higurashi veterans. Okay, and I know, like, not everyone thinks this, but there's this idea going around that, like, Satoko and Takano are gonna fucking Dragon Ball fusion into Lamb Delta at some point, right? Like, this is an origin story for Birkenstell and Lamb Delta. Wrong! Sorry to say that you are straight up incorrect, chronologically speaking. I'm gonna reference Birkenstell, our Rika, and even adult Rika, just to kind of get your mind accustomed to the logic that Ryukishi is playing at here. Quick side note, I know I pronounce Birkenstell's name kind of weird. Shut up. Like, Berncastel. Sounds like such an overemphasis, especially in a sentence. Anyways, back to Satokano and Birkenstell's origin story. I feel like the veteran community as a whole definitely has the right idea, but we're just applying the concepts completely wrong. For example, how is Satoko going to transcend into Lamb Delta when she is fucking Lamb Delta? Like, already. And why would Satoko even need to Dragon Ball fuse with Takano to become Lamb Delta when Lamb Delta is Satoko and Takano? And also Veer and Gestress. Yeah, this is probably where I'm gonna lose most of y'all. Babe, wait, I could explain. So, yeah, now's probably a good time to use my reference point, which, as I said earlier, is going to be our Rika, adult Rika, and Birkenstell. And you know what? I'm just gonna have Rena explain it. Alright, you psychotic, pseudo-looping, murderous lunatic. Explain to us how our Rika is already Birkenstell, but she's not Birkenstell.
それを比べ悩むのは神様の仕事。私たちの仕事じゃない。私たちに与えられる世界は常に一つで、その世界で幸せを見つけるようにできてるの。リカちゃんはその夢の中では二つの世界を行き来できる神様だから、そういう気持ちになってしまう。だからね、反対の手の中なんて気にしちゃダメなの。
私は魔女などもうやめてしまわなくてはならない。今こそベルンカステルの魔女ではなくて、フルでリカに戻らなくて。
So basically, Rena was alluding to the concept of parallel and multifaceted identity, which clearly struck a chord with Rika. And let me just take a minute to really hammer this concept in, because it's very important, especially when we start talking about Ciconia and how it relates to Satoko. I mean, ultimately what I'm saying is that the concept of parallel and multifaceted identity has been prevalent long before Ryukishi ever wrote Ciconia. Now, if you recall, I mentioned that I would reference our Rika, Birkenstell, and also adult Rika, whom, by the way, has her own identity. But I guess most of the theorists just forgot about her or don't care because I never see her get brought up anywhere. Of course, I'm talking about none other than Frederica Birkenstell. Okay, not Birkenstell, the other one? You know, the Birkenstell that wrote you visual novel readers poetry. Not the Birkenstell from Umineko. I'm talking about this one, not this one. So, to make things simple, we will call the Birkenstell that shows up in Higurashi Frederica. Likewise, we will call the Birkenstell from Umineko Birkenstell. Alright, simple. I mean, they literally are different characters. They just have the same fucking name. No, we're not talking about fucking Eureka. I swear to God, if any of you comment about that fucking bitch right now, Alright, well, now that we've taken the minute to establish who the fuck I'm talking about, Yeah, I'm gonna talk about Frederica for a couple minutes. Promise you, this is all for the merits of improving this video because shit about to get cray cray. So yeah, just keep in mind what we're really doing is making reference points now to draw back on later. Now, I hope you didn't forget that I'm disappointed in you neglectful heathens. Y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. Honestly, her neglection, her abandonment by the community, sickening. Now, currently as it stands, the most popular theory among Higurashi and Umineko veterans is that Go and Sots are playing into the origins for Birkenstell and Lamb Delta. The irony being that Frederica, as a character, fundamentally monkey wrenches this idea. Frederica got no sense of time. She don't give a fuck. Let me put it another way. So, in the beginning of the Minagoroshi manga, Frederica shows up and starts talking to fucking Rika. She don't give a fuck. Now, here's something y'all anime-onlys wouldn't know. So, in the visual novels, there's a poem that appears at the beginning of every arc. And these poems describe the general theme for their respective arcs through Rika's perspective. Well, all these poems are written by Frederica. So, yeah, she's like fucking omnipresent. So, ultimately, Frederica is Rika, but she's also not Rika. Yeah, I could probably explain that a little better. Basically, Frederica is a version of Rika whom grew up and lost her complacency. Rika grew up and lost her longing to live in a world without tragedy. Rika decides, instead of continuing to grasp helplessly, hopelessly towards a happy future that will never come, she instead separates from herself and chooses to exist and live solely within the sea of fragments. And thus, Frederica became. Yeah, what a beautiful, lovely story, but gotchaholic. Bruh, yeah. Just keep in mind, comparing Frederica to our Rika is a great starting point because, for one, it's an easy comparison to make since they're in the same fucking story, and for two, now we have a reference point because, believe me, if you think Frederica splitting off from Rika and not being Rika, but she's still Rika, is confusing, then, good fucking luck, man. I'm warning you, it only gets fucking worse from here, man. I mean, really, up until this point, we've only been exploring the fragment worlds, okay? Which I suggest y'all start viewing purely as a mechanism for how these characters are each other, but aren't each other. Because, as of now, our looping mechanics have purely been supernatural, right? You have fragments, each fragment represents a different world. You travel from one fragment to another fragment, you're moving from one world to another world, right? And you also gotta consider the mechanics for the fragment worlds are pretty fucking simple. You leave one fragment, it disappears. You go to the next fragment, that's real. Previous one, not real anymore. New one, real. I mean, really, the only fallacies of complication are the memories of the character. Different characters remember different things based off different rules, and also memories are accumulating. Yeah, that's great. Last thing, earlier in the video, I did say we would talk about Birkenstell. However, I'm really not going to reference her again until part 2. In that regard, please keep in mind and just get it into your brain, however the logic works for you, that Frederica and Rika are different characters. They're separate characters. Like, they've had conversations with each other before. However, they are the same person. And this is because the same type of logic will apply to the rest of the characters we're going to cross-examine, so to say. Albeit, shit's gonna get a lot more complicated, a lot more weird, because for one, we're crossing looping mechanics, we're crossing stories, there's a lot of time space. Alright. And now that you're equipped with 10 minutes of my unwitty dialogue, you are deemed worthy to continue this journey with me as we descend into the realm of Ciconia! Alright, here's a game plan. I'm gonna show y'all a clip. Probably the most important scene in fucking Higurashi Go, literally. Anytime something fucking crazy is said, I'm gonna drop a picture, give a reference, lightly explain it, and then at the very end of all this, we will slightly dip our toes in the water. So for now, roll the clip. Oh shit, the first crazy thing has been said. So basically, feathering, though her memory device is broken, so it's like a different version of feathering, but still feathering recognizes Satoko. And I'll just tell you now, Satoko and feathering were very close friends. Feathering makes several remarks throughout this conversation that emphasizes how upset she is that Satoko doesn't remember her. Feathering really likes Satoko actually because she's amusing, hence why she's more than willing to help Satoko fulfill her desires and share her powers with her. So for now, continuing. The next crazy thing has been said. Feathering just referenced Ciconia, though I'm sure y'all already knew that. Now, I can understand why those unfamiliar with Ciconia could get the impression that Ryukishi is trolling us through Feathering's broken memory device mechanics by having her mistake Satoko for someone else. However, all I'm going to say for now, and I will explain this later, but for now, Feathering makes too many references that confirms she knows exactly who she's talking to. And thus we shall continue.
ついに我にたどり着きしその執念褒めて使わす価値があろうぞ。何を豆鉄砲を食らったような顔をしている。リア、いや、密代だったか。
There's a few things here. First of all, Feathering recognized Satoko's bold efforts, then she called her Veer, and then Mitsuyo. And it's actually quite humorous that Feathering ordered those names on purpose, considering that Satoko's bold efforts relate more to Veer than it does Mitsuyo. I guess we'll start with Veer. Also, Feathering said Veer first, so very befitting. So this is Veer, and the first thing you'll notice is that she looks just like Takano, but it's not only that. She's obsessed with research, though not actually working on this research, more like getting acknowledgement or continuing the research. She's also staged her death with a burnt body, and the way Veer just kind of cryptically scripts things that she's read before, like one of the first times we see her, she has a moment very similar to when Takano quoted the Bible in Minagoroshi. I think you get the idea. It's not just personality traits or how she acts or things that motivate her. She's just very similar to Takano. But this is not about Takano, this is about Veer. So I'll just say Veer's most powerful contribution to the verse of Ciconia is her invention of the Drasic conversion process. Veer is like the fucking Thomas Jefferson of Ciconia. Ultimately, Drasic conversion, although it was invented, is not like a set machine or anything. It's more like a process that can be used by people. Though, unlike electricity, which can pretty much freely be used by anyone who isn't poor, Drasic conversion can only be used by those capable of parallel processing. And mind you, the biggest side effect is fucking dissociation. Though most in-story characters who use this process are converting spiridium, like filtering it through their brains, and it's like the most common form of energy in the verse of Ciconia, so you're probably wondering, well, what is Drasic conversion converting? Simple answer, the fucking mind into multiple bodies at the same fucking time. And one of its biggest side effects is dissociation, in other words, split personality disorder. Weird, these concepts are so similar that it's almost as if they were written by the same person. So Feathering also mentioned Mitsuyo. Now Mitsuyo honestly is a mysterious character. This is where a bit of theory and speculation comes into the video, but I'll just say, if Mitsuyo is not the real name and identity of the character Gestress, then Mitsuyo is basically Veer processing her mind through another body. At the very least, she's another Takano lookalike. Most Ciconia veterans seem to share the belief of one of these possibilities. Though, ultimately, Mitsuyo is just a very mysterious character. Yup, even in the verse of Ciconia, Ryukishi's trolling hard, go figure. Yeah, so continuing.
誰のことを言ってますの？
それとも特異脊髄標本 LD3105 号と呼んだ方が似合いかな。
Alright, so LD3105 is pretty much a brain and a spine most likely, and what's crazy about this is LD, most people think stands for Lam Delta, and 3105 is code for Satoko, like specifically Satoko, which is fucking crazy. So potentially Satoko is actually the key component that links all these stories together because, like, I don't know, it's just fucking weird, right? More so compared to the first two names that Feathering tried calling Satoko, when she says the brain specimen, she like looks down and grins to herself like she knows Sachiko wouldn't recognize it. So potentially Sachiko has no idea that she's a brain and a spine being processed into simulated parallel worlds. You know, if that's even happening, but that reference is pretty sketchy, not gonna lie. Yeah, so continuing.
さっきから意味がわかりませんわ。あなた誰なんですの？
これは。
それに大体ここはどこなんですの？西宮殿ではありませんわよね。
哀れなことよな。いや、悲しくさ。あれほどに我を追い求めて那由他の時をさまよってきたというのに、ついにというこの機運に際し、そなたは我のことをすでに忘却していたというのか。
Alright, throughout this video, the only theory I've really been bashing on is the origin story, but I'm just talking chronologically. I've never said that Sachiko won't become Lambda Delta and go into the Umineko story. However, this comment by Feathering right here almost makes it seem like Sachiko could actually already be Lambda Delta and Umineko could have already happened and she just looped so long and forgot. And considering Frederica as a character just in concept fundamentally monkey wrenches the idea of chronological storytelling, in this verse at least. It's also possible that Sachiko is like Rika in the sense that Birkenstell manifested from her suffering and is kind of like a different entity, like a collective consciousness of all the fragments of Rika that was tortured and killed, kind of put together and manifested. In that case, Lambda Delta could be a separate character, and maybe Rika and Sachiko are just going to start adopting their personalities. I'm not really sure how that works. Can a witch controlling a game piece, like, be that game piece? Regardless, Sachiko has clearly looped thousands of times and forgot who she is, so not really sure how to apply that to the story, unless she was already Lambda Delta, or maybe a different variant of Lambda Delta. It's still possible that this can lead into Umineko chronologically as much as that word applies to this fucking verse. So there's still hope for you Umineko fans, believe me. Alright, well, there's not really much else we can take from this conversation. Ultimately, Feathering just gives Sachiko looping powers, and you know the rest, so I will comment on this, actually, just real quick. Last thing I'm gonna get into before we close this video out, but is Feathering / Awa able to like read people's souls? Because if she can just look into Sachiko's soul, let's say she's actually never met her before, for whatever reason she's somehow mistaking Sachiko, even though the brain specimen is code for her fucking name, in that case she could just look at a stranger and understand their deepest desires, right? But if that's not how that works, well then wouldn't this moment in itself completely confirm that Sachiko is in fact someone who's met Feathering before? Because then how would Feathering know Sachiko's deepest desires without Sachiko ever mentioning it? Especially considering Birkenstell hates Feathering, and I could see Feathering, whether she's bored or not, just fucking with Rika / Birkenstell for the hell of it. Well, yeah, it's been fun everyone, but no it's fucking not. I hope y'all have learned something from this video, at the very least. And I know I'm wrong about a lot of the things I've said. I mean, I've said a lot of things, so just statistically I'm going to be wrong on a lot of shit. But the whole point of making this video and presenting it to you guys is so you can refine your own theories and potentially deepen your understanding of other verses that you're not familiar with. If you've never read Ciconia, if you've never dove into Umineko, and if you have no idea what Higurashi is, I have no idea how you even found my channel, to be honest. But yes, hopefully this has been a enlightening experience for you. And again, I ask for your help in part 2, mainly through the comment thread, in the sense that I'm hoping we can clear up a lot of these concepts through the veteran community in itself. And with that, thanks for watching, and I hope y'all have a great rest of your day, or night, or whatever fucking time it is. See you in the next video. And yes, my next video, I will be breaking down the SOTS trailers. Sorry I had to put that on hold. This video actually took me a long ass time to make. So, yeah, later. Have a good time. See you in a long time. Oh, you like what I got ya? Your fucking waifu is garbage.